Record here, and I'm going to attempt to record each talk individually so you can just watch your own talk. Okay, let's start with Heather. Heather, there we go. Ready, set, go for it.
I am often told by my friends with children that they hope that I don't like their kids too much because the kids I like the most are the troublemakers. But even though this is very true, I found myself standing in the kitchen of one of the preschools I own, talking to a mom, and we were both on the verge of tears. I was telling her that it was best for all the children in the school if her son didn't return after today. She stood in almost complete silence, trying not to cry and nodding her head. We had tried everything. We had personally paid for expensive therapy services. We had helped his family get additional supports from the school district. He had been with us since he was 12 months old and was deeply connected with each of his teachers, loved us fiercely, and showed up excited to be at school every day. But once he got into the classroom, Simon fell apart. Simon was a loving, blonde-haired, blue-eyed child who melted your heart. He would come back from each therapy session with a shiny rock to put in his treasure box. I had considered asking him to be part of my wedding. Standing before his mom, who loved him more than anything in the world, she managed to get one sentence out. If I couldn't help her child, he was not going to be able to be helped. I had a master's in social work with children and families. We had made plan after plan for him. I had transformed our teacher trainings for all of our teachers to focus on self-regulation skills. Each single one of Simon's caretakers loved him deeply, set clear expectations for him, had solid routines, all of the things we were supposed to do, but it wasn't working. This sweet, adorable boy had thrown a shovel at his teacher's face on the playground with the intent of doing harm. He loved his teacher, he loved his friends, and he had arrived at school that morning in a good mood. He was playing in the sandbox, and as far as anyone knew, nothing had gone wrong. But he threw that shovel because he knew it would get him out of class and earn him the right to spend time in our front office. We had done everything, and the pattern was only getting worse. If we didn't ask him to leave, someone was going to get seriously hurt. This child would do whatever it took to not have to be in class. This wasn't the first time we'd pulled out all the stops and still couldn't accomplish what a child needed. I know we can't be perfect for every child, but there was something about some of these cases that was bothering me. I started studying, reading, and searching for some sort of key, and eventually stumbled across a chapter about self-control and a book talking about the neuroscience of developing children. This book told the story of some kids who were part of a classroom using a well-known tool for teaching children self-control. The story in the book is about a kindergarten classroom who was using this program and went to a cafeteria where the other kids started a food fight. Not one of the kindergartners threw even one piece of food, and when they returned to their classroom, they complained about how crazy the other children were. As a teacher of young children, there's a part of my heart, like probably many of yours as teachers and parents, that smiles and sings at this story. Success! The program had clearly gotten through to every single one of these 5-year-olds. And that was precisely the point the book was trying to make. However, I want you to stop for a second and picture a 5-year-old you know, or yourself when you were in kindergarten. Can you picture a group of 30 5-year-olds taking a minute to think about whether or not they want to participate in a food fight, something messy, raucous, and disorganized, and then all of them deciding that they didn't want to? I'm not saying that some of them might have chosen not to participate, but they didn't decide that they didn't want to participate. They decided they wanted to comply with adults, and compliance meant not participating. These children weren't thinking for themselves. Their goal wasn't being a child, having a good lunchtime, and they certainly didn't take time to think through the messes that would be caused, the germs that would spread, or the people who would be cleaning it up. These kids are 5. The reason they didn't participate was because their only goal was complying with what adults would want. They even came back to class tattling on the non-compliance of others. This is not kids thinking for themselves. This is how kids behave when they are programmed like robots. Don't get me wrong, I have given entire trainings where the premise is getting kids to comply with requests. Serving 150 families a day, it makes my day way easier if all of these little minds are thinking the exact same way as mine and doing exactly what each of their teachers suggests. And if I read the story about the lunchroom with compliance as my goal, I feel comforted. But if I read that same story with my goal for children to become critical thinkers, I'm terrified. I know that many of you are still skeptical, and I understand why. Kids are 5. If we can teach them to mirror our behaviors, we're doing great. But I want to challenge you on that. Think about it this way. When we teach children to mimic instead of to think, we implant in their brains a dangerous pattern. When children are small and we want them to learn manners, we insist that they say please in order to get something they want. Can I have some ice cream? What's the magic word? Please. And the child gets ice cream. That same child, as a 14-year-old girl, is asked by her boyfriend to do something she doesn't want to do. Please, he insists. And what if we taught her, and we have taught her that please is a magic word, that saying please should get people what they want, and that being polite gives you access. Additionally, we have school systems from preschool on up that have measured success based on children's ability to comply with norms, rules, and requests. Good kids are ones who literally fall in line, sit when others are sitting, speak only if called on, and never disagree with adults. What skills have we prepared the 14-year-old to say no to her boyfriend? He said please, and she wants to be good. We have only prepared her to comply. I'm a big believer in data and love to look at data on children's successes. Almost every scale we have to measure children's success in early childhood calls them successful if they are compliant. They pass the test if they conform. Almost no scale calls on children to think through and solve problems. So what is the right answer? The little boy at the beginning of my story was physically assaulting others, and those actions are clearly unacceptable. And I've just told you that we aren't getting anywhere attempting to create robot students who are striving for compliance. So what do we do? The good news is that we know what to do and that we aren't getting it all wrong. The bad news is that we, as adults, are going to have to make some changes. We've come a long way learning about the brains of young children in the last decade. However, we're going to have to give up on compliance and change our goals to critical thinking. Now, I'm a nerd about brain science, and when I read about any program, I want to know what the neuroscience is they are using to make their case. When I read the same science after shifting my goals from compliance to critical thinking, I see a whole new pattern. We want children to exercise something called executive skills in the prefrontal cortex of their brains, which means they have to practice in order to get good at things like managing time or making decisions. And unless they exercise it a lot, they will not be able to build the kind of brains we need them to have. When our goal for a child's brain development is compliance, we reward and motivate them for making the right decisions based on how we, as adults, feel about those decisions. Close your eyes and picture a wonderful, positive classroom full of young children. On the wall are a set of Santa Clauses that have red pointed hats and fluffy cotton ball beards in a clear attempt to mimic the teacher's example. Good job, you hear the teacher say as children join others on the rug to listen to a story. I like how Billy is sitting. Does all of this sound familiar? Does it all sound nice? Everything you're picturing are things we would have rewarded children for. We would reward these tasks, children's brains, and do these actions more. They strive for their art to look even more like the teachers. They try to guess exactly what Billy is doing right so they can get called out too. They wear their red shirt because the teacher said she liked it last week. But where in this classroom are you picturing any reward for critical thought? We've taught them that they need to please the teacher, and to please the teacher, they need to comply with her wishes. When these children turn 14 and the person to please is now a group of friends smoking behind the mall, or when they turn 18 and the person to please is their favorite celebrity who's doing a commercial for weight loss company, or they turn 30 and the person to please is a boss that just asked them to fill out one little piece of tax paperwork with a few numbers changed, are they supposed to comply? What if we had changed the point of it all to critical thinking? What if we were talking about how Billy was sitting so that he wasn't distracting his friends because his hands were to himself and his voice was quiet? We didn't tell the kids to be just like Billy, but we gave them information about what he was doing that was working for himself and others. What if we showed children a picture of a bunch of Santas and gave them a bunch of materials and told them to make it however they wanted? What if the 14-year-old knew that you wouldn't tell her if she was right or wrong, but you would have a discussion with her and talk her through her dilemmas with the cigarettes or her boyfriend? What skills would she have when she turned 18 and was on her own, or 30 and needed to refuse her boss's request? I know for a fact that teaching kids to think critically will make for less compliance. And if we continue to wish for conformity, we'll be frustrated and disappointed. However, if we can change and savor the moments of decision, of failure, of messiness, we will be happier, and children will start learning to think. Complying means children need to read the minds of adults. And healthy brain development is not about reading minds. Healthy brain development is about asking questions and about it being okay to try something, it being okay to fail at something, it being okay to try again. This is why children learn best through games and play, where it's not a big disaster to lose or fail. In a compliance-based system, you are a good kid or a bad kid, depending on whether or not you fail at compliance. Being able to figure out how to comply is the only thing that seems to matter. And for a lot of kids, especially those like Simon, it's breaking them down. We have to start giving kids time to be themselves. They need time to play, just to play, time to make up their own rules, time to try, time to fail, time when they are thinking their own thoughts, not trying to guess ours. If we want our children, our schools, our communities, and our world to change, we are going to have to get uncomfortable with a few things. We have to become okay with kids not obeying, not conforming, not complying. We have to celebrate their decision-making, their trials, their failures, their identity, and their spirit. Now, this does not mean that a 5-year-old can cross the street by themselves or just because they gave it some thought ahead of time, they can hit a friend because they want his toy. There are nuances when health and safety are involved. But we can guide children by telling them how we are making decisions, asking them questions, appreciating their creative answers, and praising them for thinking. The key is, it might not be the choice we would make, and the choice might not pan out. But that's not only okay, but the making of the choice was the point. Every day he came to school, Simon believed that he wouldn't make it in the classroom anymore. There were 20 other kids and 4 teachers, and he felt like he had to read every one of their minds to get it right in order to be a good kid. His teachers never told him that specifically. They loved him through each and every one of his mistakes. But he felt like all of his choices were wrong and that trying to get it right was never going to be enough. When he heard his friends and was pulled out of the classroom and had one-on-one attention and no other adults to perform for, in a space where he was given to cool down and he could gain some composure, he was successful every time. He could work on a puzzle and fail. He could draw a picture and it not be perfect. His voice might get a little too loud when he got excited, but there was no one telling him that he wasn't conforming because there wasn't a class to conform to. My school and most schools don't ask for perfection from our students, but because that seems like ultimately the goal, it permeates every situation. The good kids are the ones who look and act like other kids. They're never the ones who stand out. But we need the ones who stand out. We need the ones who show us new things to do with old tools and new tools to use with old things. We need the troublemakers. I want to leave you with one more thought today, because I'm still not sure that you all believe me. When you wake up tomorrow and have a thought on how the world could be different, I want you to think one thing out loud. The only thing keeping children from being the change we want in the world, it is us telling them not to.
I'm opening up the lines for some applause. Let's give Heather some love. She's been working really hard on this. I'm unmuting your mute. Yay!
Thanks!
Great work, Itch. I knew it was going to come out sometime this class. Great.
How long was it that time?
Okay, well, I think it was between 12 and 13 minutes.
All right, one more minute shorter. I'll keep working.
1 more minute shorter. Yeah, I think it's good. We can talk about things to cut out, but we'll give you some feedback later. So let's just take 1 more minute to write down a little bit more feedback to Heather and anything you want to share with her later.